Welcome to this first tutorial in the Hound Dog series. In this episode, I'm going to show you how to create a sequenced version of the bass part of Hound Dog. You will need to have a BandLab account created for this. I have made a very short tutorial on how to do that. So to get to this point on your screen, make sure that you have watched that video first. I am logged into my BandLab account. You can see there Mr. Sanford Casey on the screen. So I'm going to click the red Create button in the top right hand corner, and then I'm going to select New Project. All of the tracks that we're going to use for this project are all software instruments. That's the green button with MIDI written up in the corner. And now we're ready to start making music. So the other thing that you will need for this is you'll need the printed resources to help you play Hound Dog. You'll have these printed, you'll have been given them in lesson, and the page you're going to need for this tutorial is this one here, the bass page. I'm going to put that over on my other screen so that I can still see it while I'm talking to you. You should have the printed one in front of you. It might be that I'll bring it back to show you different things, but I shouldn't need to, I don't think, because this one's quite straightforward. You will also need my keyboard picture-in-picture so that you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to put that on the screen now. There we go. So there's my fingers. And you can hear that we've already got a piano track coming through now because this track that's been created is set for a piano, and that is exactly what we need it to stay as. So we don't need to alter anything to do with the track. We do, however, need a beat to play in time with. It would be easy to just play this part on its own with dodgy timing, but that's not what we're doing. We're aiming to create something which is really quite complex and layered, so it's really important that we need to be in time. So if I press play, at the moment you don't hear anything at all. We need to turn on the metronome, which is this funny shaped triangle with a line sticking out of it over here, because that's what a metronome used to look like. So I'm just going to click on that so it's now blue. And now when I press play, you can hear that there's a nice beat to play in time with. Now, I'm going to have it set at 120 because I think that's about the right speed to play this. But there's no shame at all in making it a little bit slower. If you want to take it down to 100 or even 80, that will give you a bit more time to think about things and might make things a little bit easier. So if you want to double click on it and just type 80, hit enter, that will make the metronome slower, which gives you a lot more thinking time for each beat. Actually, I'll tell you what, I'll go in between the two. I'll do mine at 100 so that you can hear how the beat works. So, in lesson, we've already been through how blues music is made up of 3 primary chords, and I've shown you on the big piano already at this point what those 3 chords are. So we've got a C chord made up of C, E and G, an F chord made up of F, A and C, a G chord made up of G, B and D. They are our 3 chords. Now, if you want to use an overlay on your keyboard, you absolutely can, but I would encourage you to remember our song, which is C is to the left of the 2 black keys, and use your alphabet. So if there's 2 black keys, there's a C, must make that D, E, F, G, A, B, and then back to C to the left of the 2 black keys. I would encourage you to do that. This is a bass line, so I'm going to be using my left hand, because the bass line would normally be played by the left hand on the piano, and if we weren't sequencing, if we were performing, then we would have something else in our right hand. So if you're doing the performing project, or if you've already done the performing project, you've probably all learnt this already with your left hand. So I'm using my left hand, and I'm using my pinky finger, my middle finger, and my thumb. Okay, because for me that's the most comfortable to do this technique. You could do other things. You could use 4, 2 and 1. Okay, remember that when you're looking at your hand, your thumb is always 1 and then you count down or count up if you're on your right hand. Okay, so I've got pinky, middle and thumb. You could do this, but you are much more likely to play wrong notes if you do that. So try and get in the habit already of using good 5-finger technique. Okay, so here we go. When I press the record button, it's going to give me 4 ticks of the metronome before it starts recording, which is just to get you settled in the right tempo. So here we go, ready to record. I'm going to hit the record button. And I recorded it 4 times because, remember, there are 4 C chords before we move on to something else. 4 CEGs. This here that's been created, in this case it's orange. BandLab randomly allocates track colours, so it might not necessarily be orange in yours. That is called a region. If I double click on that, you can see down here, you can see the notes that I've just recorded. There's the C, then the E, then the G, then the C, then the E, then the G, the C, the E, the G, and the C, the E, and the G. You can identify those because if you click on them, you can see that they're lined up against this piano over here. Now, I was pretty in time. I've been doing this a long time, and you know, I was pretty good at staying in time, but I wasn't perfectly in time because if you look at some of these, you'll see that some of the notes are not exactly on the line. Now, that's partly because when I screen record, I get a little bit of lag in my computer, but it could be that was a little bit off anyway. So let's use the sequencer, the piece of software that we're using, BandLab, to correct that for us. And to do that, we're going to use something called quantizing or quantization. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of the notes I just recorded by clicking anywhere in the box and dragging over them. You could also use Select All, which is Control A if you prefer, or Command A if you're on a Mac. And this button down here is ridiculously handy. Okay, if you click on it, it sticks everything onto the nearest line. Right, the nearest line. Now you need to be careful with that. If you were miles out of time when you were playing and you click on quantize, it's just a computer. It doesn't know which line you actually want it to go to. It just goes to the nearest line. So be careful that it doesn't maybe snap some things to the wrong place if you are mega out of time. Sometimes it's actually easier to just re-record something than to have to mess around with the quantization. If you've got 1 note or maybe 2 notes which is a little bit out, you can actually grab hold of these and you can drag them backwards and forward. You can drag them up, down as well, and change the notes. We don't want to do that. But if you had one that say it went to the wrong line there, you could put it back into the right place. There's a couple of different things that you could do there to create the bass line. I'm also going to take an extra step here, which I think you should do as well. Can you see that I've got some slight gaps before one note ends and another one begins? I'm going to grab the end of the notes and I'm just going to fill in those gaps so I'm nice and smooth and I get this lovely sort of even, we call that legato in music, this even sound. So there we go. So I've filled up all my gaps and now it's nice and in time and it's nice and clear and nice and accurate. So we've done our 4 CEGs. Now we're going to record 2 FACs. Okay, to do that, I'm going to click on this thing up here, which is called the ruler, and I'm going to put this vertical line, which is called the playhead, on the start of bar 5. Now when I click on record, it's going to play me the very end of what I played for with the ticks, what I played before, sorry, with the 4 ticks, and then it's going to start recording at bar 5. So I've got my F, my A, and my C ready on, again, my pinky, my middle, and my thumb. And here I go. 2 of these this time. Okay, there we go. There's our new region recorded. I'm going to look at it, make sure everything is nice and neat and tidy. I'm going to quantize them again. So I'm going to select everything, click on quantize. Oh, didn't mention quantize settings. The note that it goes to can be changed. So at the moment it's set to 1/8, which means it will go to the nearest 8th note or nearest quaver. You might want to be a bit more precise than that. You might want to have it on 1/16, which means it will go to the nearest 16th note. Or I wouldn't recommend that you go to the nearest quarter note here because we're playing a syncopated rhythm. So we're working in half beats. So I would make sure, if it were me, that it was set to 1/8, which is what it came on by default. So it might come on by default for that you as well. They've all gone to the right place. I'm going to just extend them out so we've got nice, neat, tidy, and you can see that last one, that's way too short, so I'm just going to put that out. And now if I click back in the beginning, which I can do by clicking on bar 1 of the ruler, or you can press enter, by pressing space we can then hear. So here's our 4 CEGs, 2 FACs. Where do we go next? We need 2 more CEGs. So I'm going to click on start of bar 7 this time, and I've got my CEG pattern ready. Here we go. Good. That time it gave me 2 bars of intro, but that was okay. It didn't bother me. I'm going to quantize again. doing it as I go along, being nice and neat and tidy. Quantize, there we go, everything's in the right place. Get rid of any big gaps that we don't want, so it's nice and smooth. There we go. So we've just done 2 more C chords. We need a G chord, which is GBD, an F chord, which is FAC, and then there's a plonk C at the end. Now, I'll do that as 3 separate sections so that you can keep up nicely. So let's just do the GBD chord. Again, I've got my pinky, my middle, and my thumb ready to go. I'm at the start of bar 9. Okay, there's our next one. Done. Let's quantize it. Click on quantize. Check any gaps at the end. There's one there, which is a little bit too long. There's one there, which is a little bit too long. F chord at the start of bar 10. FAC, here we go. 2 bars of intro. Okay, there we go. There's our next one recorded in as well. Select all of them. Click on quantize. Everything's gone to the wrong place. Right place, sorry. Why did I say wrong place? Get rid of the gaps at the end. And the last one is just a single note. The 12-bar blues sequence should have 2 more bars of C chord, but in Hound Dog in particular, there's a little drum lick, which we'll get to a little bit later, that goes in here. So the start of bar 11 is just 1 note, okay? Quite short at the beginning. Okay, that's all we want at the beginning. I'm going to make sure that it's bang on to the right place, and it's a good length. I've made it exactly 1 block long, so that'll work quite nicely. So we should have now our entire sequence. Let's just check it by putting the playhead back to the beginning and pressing space. Let's turn off the metronome now. All feels nicely in time. This should be the G chord, down to the F chord, and the plonk at the end. Fantastic. There we go. There's our bass line. So that's pretty much the first episode completed. Next, we're going to need to put some chords on top. And I'm just going to mention the metronome again, because if you change the metronome now, say I put it to 140, let's be really speedy. If you change the metronome, the musical changes for you. You can see it's got a lot faster. Okay, so don't worry at all about whatever speed you're recording. I mean, we could put it at 200 if we wanted to sound crazy fast. I wouldn't recommend that, but I'm just showing you that whatever speed you put it at, you can change it afterwards and it will end up at the right speed. Right speed is probably about 140, so that's where I'm going to leave it. But I might turn it down again when I do the chords for the next section. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you create the bass line for Hound Dog. Very important step. You will notice up here it says last saved, never. Make sure that you click on the save button and it will save it into your accounts. At least it will if it doesn't. There we go. So it now says last saved just now. If I go back to the BandLab homepage, which I think I can do here by clicking on exit, we should now, fingers crossed, have a new project. Yes, we have saved in here. And I'm going to take an extra step. I'm going to rename it. How do I do that? I think I just double click on here and I'm just going to type. Oh, no, that's not working. Why can't I rename? Should have worked this out. Hang on a second. Why can't I do it? Let's go back into Studio and see if I can do that. Can I do it in here? There we go. I should have done it in there. So I'm going to call this Hound Dog. There we go. And it says last saved just now. So there we go. That will then mean that you can find it, especially if you've got lots of different projects saved in your account when you come back to it. See you in the next tutorial where I show you how to add the chord part.